Because when I think about feminism, often people have this quick idea of what a feminist would look like. And often in the Korean context, that's this radical person who defies everything, very alternative. But by saying and claiming that this is a feminist book and making people read these individual stories from women of this different spectrum, you actually educate these people that within a society like Korea, which is often seen as quite homogenous, and which it is to an extent, the ecosystem, the diversity is there. Like you, even Minyoung, Sangeun, and Lee, and myself, we're very different, but we're similar in one way or the other, by being a Korean woman, right? So I think that's important because we just need to collect more data, and people need to read more about how different Korean women can be. But it's really hard to find that one person who've defied everything and left home and did something complete crazy. And often it's like a family urban legend, she never came home, and you never know what she's doing now. But but I think I really want to know these stories. Like, so what is she doing? I know that stuff. So like I said, even at my workplace, sometimes the conversations, I feel like there's an angst amongst a lot of women, especially, that we don't know the alternative way of living, other than being a Korean woman, who've ticked all these big boxes along the way. Like, one example that I always give is my mom, who I also wrote about in my book. She went to the best university. She's always been a very good student. She got married at the age of everybody wanted to get married, had kids. And then she thought that was it, right? It's like, you've ticked all the boxes, and now what, right? So I think it's also important to learn through these indirect experiences, as Minyoung said, of alternative ways of living as a woman, rather than just this one track of being a woman, which has been projected by a lot in the Korean media, bank commercials and so on. So, yeah.
They have to designate and nominate at least the one female board of directors in their boardroom. It's a 자본시장법 in Korean. So because of that regulatory changes, it helped the society, at least the business community, to increase the proportion of the female in the executives and leaderships.
We can't let them follow what worked for us as a recipe anymore, because the world is changing so fast, and that recipe is not going to exist in later, like 2 years or 5 years or in 10 years later. And what we're trying to, I think, at least what I'm trying to say through this book to the younger generation, is that we have hopes for them, but at the same time, I want them to navigate their own way of finding what's best for their future. And in order for them to do that is just, reference what we've done, but don't follow it. But please make rebellious choices. Because, I know, it is complicated. I mean, if we have a steady life, I can guarantee that it's gonna be okay, but very boring. But when you make rebellious choices, everything in your life is going to be a swirl of twister. But then you are going to find the sparks and land somewhere where you're able to grow and follow your dreams.
The first page of the book that I really love, I have to read it because I can't memorize. So the editor's note, they said, it's from Audre Lorde. It said that if I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. Keep your identity. Like, I hope other people or audiences to find their identity and then to really struggle to keep it. Because if you lose it, you lose everything. Yeah.
I'm Sarah. I currently live in Seoul, and I've been living in Seoul for the past 7 years. Before, I was based in Australia. That's where I did my high school and university. Now I work as a medical science liaison, which is part of R&D for a pharmaceutical company, American company actually, based in Seoul. And yeah, besides that, I just did my first triathlon the other month. So yeah, I really enjoy outdoor sports and endurance sports.
Great. Oh, hi. So my name is Victoria. Where do I start again?
It's a very difficult question.
So I was born in New Jersey, a very small town called Somerspoint. I came to Korea in Busan when I was 15 years old, and since then, academically, I've grown into from sales specialist to now as a procurement specialist, working on supply chain for automotive industry and especially into manufacturing as well. And as of today, I'm actually looking for new opportunities, and I'm really liking myself at the moment of trying to learn where do I start next and how I can actually enlighten someone out there who could relate to my situation as well. So I'm really thrilled to be here with you, Jada. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sangeun. I'm happy to be here with my Be the Key members here. Like first time when I introduce, I mostly tell my job, but these days I'm an author of the book called Be the Key. And also I live in Byeongjeon, nearby Suwon in Korea. I've been working in semiconductor company for about 8 years now. My job is planning the headcount. I love plannings. So I planned to come here today. And I have a one dog with my partner with happy life. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank God I can see the session of introducing our book, Be the Key.
I know. Oh, that's my favorite.
So I'm one of the author. My name is Minyoung Kim. I have been working in the field of sustainability and climate change over the last 15 years. Sorry, guys, you have to listen to my introduction. Same introduction over and over again. But I've been working in this field over the last 15 years, and I've been working and living as a nomad in my career space. I've been changing my jobs here and there, and my current position and current organization is my 7th one. So I spent half of those 15 years in public sector, and the other half from private sector. So I've been really enjoying growing in my career, and to share my career growth and development with people. I participated as one of the authors for the book.
It's wonderful to have you all here. Thank you for the introductions. And you are authors. That's something you can be very proud of, that you've all contributed towards this book called Be the Key, which I had the great pleasure of reading and I highly recommend. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the work that you have done and the ideas that you've expressed in that. And perhaps to start us off, I'll give you like an assessment of how I read the book. And just even hearing your introductions then, it strikes me, and I'm not sure how you might react to this, but your lives and your experiences are so beyond stereotypes of what we might have, of what a woman is meant to be or do, and everything you described from triathlons to looking for jobs to this sector and that sector. It really challenges our expectations and preconceptions of what not just Korean women, but women in general and humans in general are meant to be doing in the 21st century. As I read your book, and I'll ask you to respond to this however you like, I found that through these 10 stories, there was so much that connected you all, that brought you all together, and I could see themes, but at the same time, each story and each life and each experience was so uniquely different. So they were the same, but different. And then the second thing I noticed, that this was a book so heavily about gender, the experiences of working in Korean culture and society and offices and Confucianism and patriarchy and expectations and emotional labor. But at the same time, it wasn't really about gender. It was just about people's stories. And the third thing was that it was about Korea, and it was about the gapjil, and it was about the hwesas and the hierarchy and the proverbs that you put in there about Buddhism. But it was also about the world, about Australia, and the United States and all of these other places. And so that's how I responded to your book. It was about individuals, but it was also about people. It was about gender, but it wasn't about gender. It was about Korea, and it wasn't about Korea. And I thought that was a really good thing. That's what I really loved about it. How do you respond to this assessment that I'm giving you of your wonderful Be the Key book? Is it right? Or
I think it's very, interesting to hear, your view, because, when we started this project, not this year, actually, we started this project last year when we decided to write our stories in Korean. And even this year, we really wanted to reach our audience by writing English book to global readers. And when we started that project, we didn't set the topic. You should write, this topic, and you should, write this topic and things like that. We, our focus of not writing actually, sharing our stories is just to sharing our stories. We didn't have any intention, and we wanted to raise our voices. And it's really, that's why it's really, interesting to hear that our stories can be read like that and in different composition of like different views and different perspectives. And yeah.
Yeah, same to me too. Same to me too. I like your assessment because whenever I hear other audience or people who read this book, they always give the assessment that I never thought about. So I think in that way, the title "Be the Key" is quite suitable because you have a key, but all different types, and then you can also interpret in a different way, but you find a way. So I really like it. Yeah, thank you.
tell me something more about the title. The origins, the meanings, how you feel about it now.
Excited.
Yeah, it's a long story. Long story, but short. 8 of us went to Australia with this e-walk project with Australia Korea Foundation. And then the last day we went to a bar and it's called the Key.
Lock and key.
Yeah, lock the key, yes.
Yeah,
Right.
lock and key.
Lock and key. And then I was like, oh, maybe we should be the key. Like we open the doors and then to find our way, and also have the door open for other people to come in and out. That's maybe what we want to be by empowering other people or ourselves. So that's how the title was invented.
This is a nice way of saying that you were drunk. It happened in a bar.
The really funny story is, so I was unfortunate. I couldn't join their trip, but they went to Melbourne, which is where I studied, and I went to Melbourne Uni. And they sent a photo from the bar Lock and Key and posted on the group chat. And that's where I used to literally go like every Friday night. It's like when I was at uni. So it was kind of like my world come into full circle, how about 10 or 15 years later, like all these people, like my girls, like my ladies, were manifesting it in a bar that I used to go often as like a uni student. And that's where the name of our book, came about. So it was quite funny.
And for you, it's just something so ordered. It's like Boston is coming to Korea and calling their book Gyocheon Chicken.
Yes, something like that, exactly.
And actually, I mean, the title of the book and also the name of our community didn't come up right away. Actually, we used to use the Empower, where we met actually through the leadership program initiated by the British Embassy as well as the British Chamber of Commerce in Korea, which was called Empower Program. So we used to use the name for the community where we sharing our views and where we learn one another, etc. But we were in the process of rethinking the name of our community and what would be the best, because and at the time earlier this year we thought that we sort of like past stage empowering one another, and we need a sort of a new name to move forward, move beyond. So actually, in our conversation, we used the ChatGPT to come up with a very creative name, and we had really, fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. Millions of options. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, fucking key.
Yeah, be the key. That's all that's stuck out. Yeah.
Can you say something about community? Because this comes about as part of community and what that community is, the importance of community, because we live increasingly in a neoliberal world where we encourage to go home and be on our social media or by ourselves and individualism and this kind of thing. Tell me about community.
So I guess I can start by saying, like what Minyoung said, how we met. So it was a program that was run by the British Embassy and the British Chamber of Commerce. And I think that application itself also drew a lot of women who had this like big thirst of wanting a community or have been wanting to have a community in Korea for a while. So you look at the first cohort which we are in, even the age range was from mid-20s to like early 50s. And we were all there because during our career journey, whether that was about 3 years in or 20 years in, we just wanted role models and also wanted to share our experiences to the next generation. So I think that was the one that really tied us, that went beyond the borders of where we came from and how old we were, and just wanted to share our stories collectively as a woman. And I do think it's a bit not ironic, but it's funny that it had to be the British Embassy for us to meet up. But I think it was a very a meaningful opportunity for us to find ourselves. And I think even the program organizations are quite stunned to this day that we've continued beyond the program and now have published a book. And then we found other sources of funding to go to Australia to promote the book and to be here as well. So we do see a ripple effect of just this community that we started.
That irony of the British Embassy doing it. Tell me about that. I mean, because it sounds like there is this space or this project, this community, and it comes from, for want of a better word, sort of Western European values and approach to things rather than a indigenous Korean one. Am I misreading that, or how do you see this being the birth child of the British Embassy Council?
I mean, I think it's a great start, but I think, we, in the end, would want some kind of like more organic and indigenous, formations of women, because often it's something that I also had to navigate, coming back from Australia, which is more like a liberal society and where gender rights a bit more on par and another compared to Korea. So when I came back after about 6 years studying in Australia to Korea, it was a bit of a reverse cultural shock. And just even the conversation you have at work, even the women didn't really realize why this was patriarchal, and they would say, oh, but our department, 90% of our people in our department are all women. Is that a bad thing, But then you look at the stats that it's just this particular department that had more women than other departments. So there's little dialogues where you have to kind of, not fight, but you have to kind of like tell other women like why this was a problem. And that was, I think, a big bulk of the work that I had to do and fight for it. So, I guess like looking forward, we really hope to see more of Indigenous changes. And I think that has been changing because with this program, we had the opportunity to go to a lot of like companies in Korea, even though they were British companies, but most of them would be Korean workers. And these companies would lead these leadership programs for women. So I think there is some kind of change slowly happening. But as you said, I think it's a space that we need to navigate more.
I think also it was possible because, if you're Korean, sometimes it's quite, tricky and difficult to notice what this is like in a Korean thing. But because they have a different perspective and different point of view, they could recognize, they could observe, Korean working environment quite patriarchal and quite structured. So I guess while the British Embassy and the British Chamber of Commerce, they are looking for such, creative and new, innovative program, I think they, identify this as one of the key agenda, maybe to tackle in Korean business environment. So although the program itself was like monthly basis, like learning and knowledge sharing sessions, but we didn't stop there actually, because like Sarah mentioned, everyone, we had strong eager and strong thirst to learn more and to grow and evolve. So I think that itself made us motivate each other to do something more than scheduled within the program.
And it's wonderful that it comes about out of passion and empowerment and progress and community. It's because sometimes communities come out of necessity because of terrible events or movements happen with that. But when I, just from what I hear from you, is that this is us wanting to develop and grow. We have desires to move forward, and by finding each other or the broader community, that helps. What is it about having other people around you, you think? Because you're all different, but then all the same at the same time. What is it about community that helps? That's a really weird question, but what I'm trying to ask, what is it about the community that encourages or empowers and helps you be the lock and key?
Well, I think something it's not weird question, because I have already shared so many times that one of the key advantages that I received and that I obtained from this program is a sense of belongings. Because like you mentioned earlier, I have been leading my life very self-oriented. And for me, personal development, personal growth, and career development has been, one of the core values for me. So I'm very, self-focused, and I've been really focusing on developing myself. And it was, for me, quite new opportunities and also experience for me to be part of the community. And although at the initial stage, I used to just attend the monthly knowledge sharing sessions and corporate workshop and so on. And as time went, I felt that, as I mentioned, everyone had the same feelings, thirst and eager to learn and go further. So I felt the same empathy and same passion. And the writing this book, Korean version and English also, the part of our project as well. So we, as time went by, we had a sort of a credentials. We could do like this ourselves. So that itself, by just being part of the community, made it possible, something that I used to believe before not possible. So that's one of the benefits I had for this community.
I can add on because this community is full of resources. We're all from different departments, different talents, different characteristics. So when someone bring up this idea, people can kind of match, like, oh, I can do this, or I can participate, and then okay, let's complete this. So that's how our book keep being published. And also I think was it last month we went to the Australia Korea British Council event called Women in Leadership, and then we were like, oh, okay, let's promote our book, and also I'm gonna be on panel, and then suddenly everyone show up. So they were there just to support or to present or give cheers. So I think the power of communities is really like a lot of resources popping up and give support and make things happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the beauty of community, because we are not one type of person.
Yeah.
Because, for example, when we start initiative, for example, for writing this book, and like you need a role for planning, you need a role for execution, and you need a role for
ideas,
etc. And for example, for Sangeun, she is really like
Yeah, she meticulous.
And dictator in a good way.
And the fact that everyone came, from different industry as well, with different, expertise and background, that really helped us to, accelerate and create more synergy among us.
I did wanted to add one more thing because I think in general what we're trying to say is that community creates its own culture. I think we kind of brought our own culture to the table, and it's now out on books, but also I think we're bringing our own identities and also bringing that mixture of a collaboration where it could, excite global, readers out there, and also small individuals, and then spark up the ideas and try to light it up for anyone who's struggling out there. Thinking about, am I the only one person who's thinking about this? But there are a lot of people who does have that kind of a need to be in the spotlighted. And I think we're trying to give that,
Back here.
give back to the society, and also bringing that culture alive. And I can really relate to these women. Powerful women.
Yeah, and I'd like to call it the power of sorority more like than community, because I think it's the sisterhood that really is quite special. I don't know what a brotherhood is because it's not something I have, but I think as you've read the book and as people know stats about Korea, I think being a woman in Korea is a bit more of a different experience than being a woman, let's say, in a more westernized country. I know we will talk about that later. So I really value the sorority of it. And as someone being a bit more on the younger side of the group, I love that I have a lot of different examples that I can role model off. And, in our group, we have also like powerful single women, but also like women with like twin daughters, with like two grown up, like male, kids. So people all struggling in their different like life cycle of being a woman, which also includes, family planning and, having a baby and so on. And we've also celebrate those events along the way. So I think it's kind of good just to learn how you can juggle and manage your life as being a woman and doing all these things.
Yeah.
I love that the idea of meeting new people or community, whether it's sisterhood or brotherhood or whatever it might be, it makes your world bigger. You learn new ideas, new expressions. Your world becomes bigger, sort of in terms of values, in terms of perspective, in terms of empathy. You understand a little bit more about the semiconductor industry, or about Australian pubs, about Korean American identity, and all of these things I think help you navigate the world and get you out of your own sort of little individual life. And I think that's a beautiful thing. However, it happens. There's many things I want to go on with, but was it hard to write a book? I mean, of course it is hard to write a book, but I think the question I want to ask you is it hard to write a book about being a Korean woman in Korea? And originally it was written in Korea. Was there ever this moment when you thought, oh no, I can't do that? Because of the content, or was it no, like I'm going to put this down and that's real fun thing? How was that experience? Because imposter syndrome is real, and there's also this broader cultural element and sexual element of it, gender element. How was that?
I think that happened to me both professionally and personally, because when we were discussing this idea, it took me some time actually to, make my decision to be part of this project, because professionally, I'm leading a new business division as a leader. So I had a number of, responsibilities, etc. So I was, dealing with my, work in the middle of some business's working schedule. At the same time, like you mentioned, Christianly, I, had self-doubt. Because for many Koreans, writing a book is one of the bucket list. But when I was thinking about, writing a book, and, I asked myself, like, whether I am suitable, whether I am in the right position to write story, because to me, yet I'm not a special, woman or, business leader in the Korean business community. So I used to, I was thinking hard whether I could, write this, write a book or write a chapter in the book. But at the end of the day, again, going back to the one of the benefits of being part of the community, it gave me a sense of not only belongings, but sense of emotional comfort that I could be myself. I could be vulnerable within this community. I could be myself. So I don't need to, write a quite fantastic or, extraordinary, stories. I just need to be myself as part of this, community. And that really helped me to write a decision. I should be here and I should add my, a spoonful of my, contribution to the team.
It is a very vulnerable book, reading in different ways. And what I liked about it is it's not, because there are you can do this kind of like Queen Never Cry, girl boss, and this is like Superwoman book, or it could be this like life sucks and everything's terrible book. But your book felt honest and real, but also vulnerable, and it was addressing challenges in a very straightforward way. And when I was reading it, I thought, wow, that must take courage to say that to the world, to talk about parents' divorce or being single, all of these things that we kind of don't really want to tell strangers. And you were telling people that.
I think for me, the biggest, the hardest part was I feel like I didn't have enough context because I still felt like quite a junior. Like I am not in a leadership position at my work and I think, a lot of times in Korean workforces is the age is quite an important aspect of your seniority, and always being the youngest person in the room, I just felt like I just didn't have enough license to talk about, what was going on in my work because it seemed too much of an abysmal event. So that's why I had to write about my mom and my grandma, because I was like, oh, these are women that I know, and I know these struggles quite well. And so I guess that was trying to dig up my personal stories, because I felt like I didn't have a lot of professional events that I guess were hardships enough to share in this journey. But I think it was that vulnerable stories that people like to read about, and I was like, oh, so my content sells, my story sells. So it was a good little reminder.
If I sometimes get stories wrong because they were tender, but you were talking about your height and your size, and it's not easy for you to talk about.
It's not.
It's easy to talk about your age if you were young.
Exactly, and that's actually something that I haven't really included in the Korean book, but that's something I've added additionally in the English version, because I think it took me a lot of courage to kind of talk about it, and B, I didn't know how that will well translate in the Korean book. Navigating the whole lookism and the whole issues around, women's body and how it's been scrutinized quite a lot in pop culture. I felt that was too heavy and would stir up too much of controversies. So that's the part that I kind of left it out. But I did know that when I was talking about in English, which sometimes I'm more comfortable talking to, being a native in both languages, that was a crucial part of the chunk that I wanted to add, because it is quite hard, growing up in a society where you go to a shoe shop and they don't sell your shoe size. You just feel like you're wrong because everybody's so homogenous in the society. And I think, but then the thing is, you ask all these women in Korea, even my mom, who's a petite, normal size, she also feels like she's the biggest person in the room. So I think it's this shared insecurity that a lot of Korean women have. And I just really want to just address it, because, call it out and say, we are all sharing the same issues about our bodies. And it's not our fault. It's, it's these people who don't make enough shoe sizes, and clothing sizes.
I'm fascinated by the fact that it's not in the Korean version. I think when Young-chi is right now, there's one part, and you've said to me, actually, that's not in the Korean version. And if it was going to be in either version, it should have perhaps been in that. But I think what that teaches us is not about the decision, or it should have, it shouldn't have, but that's the reality of Korean culture, and the thought processes and the second guesses that everybody has here. The nameshison, the public gaze is very, very strong in this country.
For me, it was, there was a hard moment, but shifted when I think it was EJ said, we are not talking about our success story. We're talking about our story. And then later on, I was like, okay, so I'm not successful. Okay, I can write anything about myself. And then later, at that point, I was like, oh, this is easy. I'm just talking about myself. And also, as Sarah said, there are some different points for me as well in the Korean chapter and then Korean book and the English book. It was about my identity. So when I wrote in Korean book, I was writing too much. I thought I was writing too much about my personal stories, too much, and then later, if I put my identity story on here, and I was like, oh, this book is not gonna, or its book is gonna be sensational for someone. So I was like, okay, I will not write it. And then when we decide to write English book, I was like, oh, okay, of course I will write it. And then I'm sure many of my colleagues or Korean friends would also read this, but I don't think they will find the subtleness that I said. That's another joy of my chapter for me. Yeah.
Dropping breadcrumbs.
Yes.
Yeah.
You will know me.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why actually it's very fun to meet you. Having read and have these images or ideas and I might have been picking up on things that you didn't intend or incorrectly assuming, and then to sit and so thank you again very much for coming to do this. Victoria, the experience of writing down who you are in Korean and in English, and I love what Sangeun said, by the way, it came from EJ. You said that you're not writing a success story, you're writing a story. That takes a lot of courage. It's very easy to analyze someone else. It's very hard to turn a mirror onto ourselves, isn't it?
It definitely is. So as both of these women mentioned, I was not part of the Korean book, but for the English version, I took a courage to, just show the world who I am. And I'm just a person. And a person who's struggling inside and out, and also thinking about my personal journey, but also about my professional journey, who has been in the industry for quite some time, but also still thinking about whether I am taking the next step right, or is it still not enough? So that's the part it really took me to, focus on what kind of, titles or what kind of subjects what I would like to address. And I really wanted to focus on the professional journey, but I didn't know how to portray that without me telling them that I come from a Korean American, background. And my identity, my character, I think that all was shaped when I was so little. And I kind of moved around a lot from, New Jersey, San Francisco, Denver, Kentucky, you name it. And then I finally landed in, Busan in Korea, and then moved up to Seoul, where I had the opportunity to live alone, away from my parents. And all this thing, I thought it was just, just too personal, and it's not so important. But I thought it could be shared and somebody could actually relate to my personal story also. So that kind of mixture of emotional, struggle kind of enlightened me to, show who I am personally and share my professional story as a procurement professional. And I think people shouldn't be afraid of who they are, because it's just an individual who is, trying to find their way into their lives. And I'm sure everybody can relate to that. And it's not just about, finding your personal identity, but also trying to fit into the community, to the society, and to whatever you feel comfortable with. So I think I kind of found my comfort zone by, being part of this, book journey, and also being part of this community as a sorority you mentioned. So I'm pretty proud of it. And like I said, that struggle wasn't a struggle. It was more of our courage out of courage. And I think these women are fabulous.
It's wonderful the way you describe it, and it's almost existential, like this idea of who am I and where am I, and but I think that's what people are forced to come to terms with these days, and the courage that you've all done in doing this will hopefully allow the next generation or people in society to feel seen and to feel recognized, because for a long time certain members of society, they didn't speak up or they weren't heard, and therefore people felt alone. And it requires the courage, I think, of people to speak up even when society is not ready, and when the conversations are a little uncomfortable around breadcrumbs or appearance or Korean Americanness. We do need to speak up to not just console ourselves, but to give comfort to other people. There's a wonderful Greek expression that I always come back to, which is that society prospers when people plant trees under whose shade they will not sit. And, to plant a tree is a very difficult and arduous and hard thing to do. And you do it even though you're not going to benefit from the fruit and the shade, but the next generation will. And doing things for that is a wonderful thing. If we can talk a little bit about some of the issues in the book. So, there are various chapters. We have 4 of you here today, which is great. And, as I was reading through it, I'm getting these things that, I didn't experience that in Korean society. I've been here for 20 years and that hasn't happened to me and that hasn't happened to me. So are there any particular elements that you thought were important to share with people that hadn't read the book yet? What do we learn? What do we know? What does the book reveal about this society? A lot, obviously, but are there any key points you think? I'm thinking of when you're sort of being told that your salary is being reduced, you're running off to Australia at 15 because of certain things. What to you are the important stories from the book?
When we wrote this book, there was some discussion in the book committee, or some of the previous book committee, that okay, should we write down these words called feminism or feminist? Is it okay? And then that was a question. But when we worked with the editor, Josie, she was like, totally fine. Why is the matter? And I looked up the definition, of course, through the ChatGPT.
Is ChatGPT a feminist?
Depending on the questions. So, and then I found the definition. It's totally different from what I heard of or what I expected from other people, out the internet. So what's difference was the definition is more like a gender equality. We are removing the discrimination about the gender in many forms. But in the internet, feminism or feminist is equal as 남성 혐오, like hate men, something like that. And then we're very, even though we believe this definition, we are afraid of use it because we believe also this like other people's opinion that we don't think we believe, but actually we kind of started believing. So that made us kind of collective illusion. That points. So for me, that moment was quite special. Yeah. And then also writing about the stories, like there are some few words that other people might feel surprised or offended. They were worried about it, and I was like, this is my book. I've got to write it. Yeah. So those moments, yeah, I remember. Yeah.
This is a horrible question. Is it a feminist book?
Feminist book. It's about mostly like our day-on-day life book. But when you say, if I have to say, if it's a feminist book or not feminist book, I can say also feminist book, because we are more speaking up for the equality, gender equality. We are sharing the current status quo of our experience that we feel not comfortable, and sharing this to other people, and also hoping them to feel the same way, or giving them courage to speak up. Yeah. So in that way, I can say feminist book.
I think it can, I mean, it's up to the perspective of reader.
Yeah.
For example, my stories can be read as an example of a woman who has been leading her life with her own way against to a certain cultural expectations in Korea. Because, for example, I wrote my stories in different stories in both in Korean and English as well. For example, we do have a certain cultural expectation for women in Korea. Example, like we have to get a job by a certain age. We have to get married by a certain age, and you have to have a kid, things like that. And also sacrificing raising your kids and sacrificing for your family, considered for takes for granted. So I have 5 aunts in my close family, and from very early young, I grew up with that environment. So it was very much clear for me to, that I do not want to have such life. So for me, it's very clear. I wanna grow as a career woman. I want career success, and the life that I've been living is a sort of like success story in a way to make a decision and to lead a life as a way I want. So some of the examples I share my stories that I really strongly against a certain expectation. Also, I was not reluctant to pursue and chase after my dreams. So you can find some examples in English. I'm not going to share in detail, but yeah.
Can you say something about what it feels like to live under those expectations or to go against them? Because they're not expectations that I've experienced. That there are different ones, being an English male of a certain age. But what does it feel like having those expectations? And you say they came from 5 aunts sometimes. They often, it's not always from society or men, but from people. What does it feel like experiencing those expectations about womanhood and what it means to be a woman?
I think there's a strong difference, like whether depending on whether you have awareness, because there are still around me. There are many Korean women. I mean, can be my friends, my acquaintances, and my colleagues as well, who does not have the same awareness of that, taking it for granted. This is very typical, and this is very normal thing in Korea. And compared to that, I had a clear awareness that this is something different from compared to other countries. Maybe because I was exposed to Western cultures from early stage when I was young. Maybe because of that, and also I read a lot. As a source of indirect learning opportunities. So I could get a sense of there's many other ways out there. So really, as long as you have such awareness, maybe such people might feel uncomfortable to be living in such environment. So
We spoke about books before we started. Were there any books very quickly that had an impact on you? You said you read a lot. Was there like, this opened my eyes, or this taught me this, or is there an example of that?
you mean the books about?
Yeah, was there any books that have been impactful in your life?
Maybe the books written by Hanbia.
Yep.
Yeah, she was a very famous when I was in early 20s. Yeah. And she was such a frontier and pioneer as a woman because when I was 20, there was such a role model before. She was working in the NGO and she was helping like community in Africa and very developing countries, and she traveled around the globe, and she was not satisfied with just settling in a typical way of Korean lifestyle. She led her life as a single, and she was a Korean woman working in the NGO. NGO also was not like fashionable or
Like a popular choice back in the, she's now in her mid 60s and 70s. Yeah.
So she wrote, a number of, bestsellers in the past, and that really motivated me a lot to lead my life that way.
Books are important. Well, Sarah, any stories from the book or this? What needs to be shared? What people need to know?
I think every story is quite important. So I would like to kind of also comment back on whether this book is a feminist book or not. I think it's important to say that, yes, it is a feminist book. Because when I think about feminism, often people have this quick idea of what a feminist would look like. And often in the Korean context, that's this radical person who defies everything, very alternative. But by saying and claiming that this is a feminist book and making people read these individual stories from women of this different spectrum, you actually educate these people that within a society like Korea, which is often seen as quite homogenous, and which it is to an extent, the ecosystem, the diversity is there. Like even Minyoung, Sangeun, and Lee, and myself, we are very different, but we're similar in one way or the other. By being a Korean woman, right? So I think that's important because we just need to collect more data, and people need to read more about how different Korean women can be and are out there. And also, I wanted to echo what Minyoung said as well, was that I think in Korean society, they tend to empower more of the mainstream stories. And it's, you talked about different role models. I think, I also have six aunts actually, three on my mom's side and three on my dad's side. And, it's very like lots of, women in my family. But despite that, it's really hard to find that one person who've defied everything and left home and did something completely crazy. And often it's like a family urban legend, she never came home, and, you never know what she's doing now. But, but I think I really want to know these stories. Like, so what is she doing? I know that stuff. So, like I said, even at my workplace, sometimes the conversations, I feel like there's an angst amongst a lot of women, especially, that we don't know the alternative way of living, other than being a Korean woman, have ticked all these big boxes along the way. Like one example that I always give is my mom, who I also wrote about in my book. She went to the best university. She's always been a very good student. She got married at the age of that everybody wanted to get married, had kids. And then she thought that was it, right? It's like you've ticked all the boxes, and now what, right? So I think it's also important to learn through these indirect experiences, as Minyoung said, of alternative ways of living as a woman, rather than just this one track of being a woman, which has been projected by a lot in the Korean media, bank commercials and so on. So, yeah.
I think that's what we still are struggling a lot in our working environment, because not only in the family background, but also in the workplaces, we lack a role model and the female leaders in the leadership position. One of the reasons why I decided to join the current organization, because they provide me with a leadership position at a very early stage. And the previous organization, while I was coming up with a career ladder, the one thing I have noticed is that in the boardroom and in the leadership meeting, there were men in black, no single female leader in the seat. So because I'm working for sustainability and ESG, environmental, social, and governance. It's a such thing I've been working for, and as part of my work, working for gender diversity, especially in leadership space, as well as DEI, has been my passion as well. So to enhance and to secure a seat for me as a female leader, not only for myself, but being in the leadership position, a position gives such a huge power to make a change because you have a decision power, right? So I really wanted to leverage that power as a female leader. So not only for my career success, but also for the generation to come. In my team as well, in my current organization, and also maybe potential readers as well. So yeah, I think we still really need such role models in our workplaces.
And maybe you will be role models for other people, inspiring people. It's not just about making the decisions, but it's being seen by others making the decision. I find myself very fortunate sometimes that I grew up in the United Kingdom and we had gay celebrities everywhere. And so I'm pretty open to gay people. And we had Margaret Thatcher for many years, Queen Elizabeth. And in my family, it was my grandmother who was the matriarch of the family. And so I've always seen powerful women around me. And it's never occurred to me that it would be any other way. When we talk about Korean society, and sometimes these obstacles in the boardroom or in the conversations and what you express, can you maybe say something about the cultural and structural obstacles? Because, there might be elements of culture and language and Confucianism and attitudes. So there might also be sort of structural or political or economic obstacles that make it hard to do what you're doing. How do you understand that the cultural and structural obstacles, or how do they manifest? What are some examples of those?
I think the biggest thing we can talk about is obviously the language, a very hierarchical language, as anyone who speaks Korean would know.
Can I ask you a question? Very sorry.
Yes.
Do you call them oni in Korean? Do you use it? I got my question right, because this is not, isn't it?
I don't think so, no. And I think that's why the primary language that we speak is English, but it's more egalitarian than it is to speak Korean. But when we do speak Korean amongst each other, it's often 존댓말, the honorifics, by default, right? So very spot on, very yeah. So that's an example, because the language barrier, the hierarchical language already sets this tone of who is in power, and that's why age is so important in Korea. The first thing you ask someone is, what's your name, what's your age? Because we need to set the power dynamics between us, right? And I think, so an example for me is, I work in pharmaceuticals, and a big bulk of my job is meeting clients who often are doctors. And I think the doctor community anywhere in the world is the most conservative group that you can probably meet in a majority, right? So Korean society, Korean doctors, it's like you triple the conservatism. And me coming in as a 22-year-old upon graduation, as a young girl, 22-year-old studying in Australia, I just did not know how to write an email. Like, it took me, like, I was literally, this was like a couple of years before GPT came out, and I didn't know how to write an email. So I was like looking up books. I even signed up like a Korean class for me, because I didn't know how to write in honorifics. And often, what I found myself was I was always lowering myself, because, if you know the psychodynamics of the Korean language, you lower yourself. And also, as a woman, there's also no layer of where the voice becomes quite subservient. You request everything, and you're always sorry, and you're always, waiting for them to respond. And on top of the female tone, I felt like I was just kind of really, doing that. So I think that the language barrier is a big thing, and especially for how females speak, that also is quite interesting. And I know in Japanese it's even worse, because there's a more distinction. So one thing that I've started doing at work actually is I don't know if my clients notice, but I think I've been using more assertive voice. So I think I'm using more, when I ask them for someone's schedule, I'll give them my schedule first. So I would notice all these little things and kind of catch what other male colleagues would write to their clients and try to adopt it, because I just wanted to kind of gender eyes, my voice, my tone. Yeah. So language, I think, is a big barrier.
I noticed it's fascinating to me, and I think because when people watch from outside Korea who don't speak the language, when they watch Korean dramas, and this is not a criticism, they'll see people calling each other Jisoo and Donghyun
Yep.
and things like that, but in the subtitles. But the people are not actually saying that. They're
Yeah.
using honorifics, they're
Yeah.
using hotings,
Yeah.
Donghyun이 엄마, and
Yeah.
this kind of thing,
Yeah.
사장님. They're using all of these titles, and I was watching, there's two films where it struck me, Western films. One was Ex Machina, which is a wonderful movie about AI as a man falls in love with a robot woman. And another movie is Lost in Translation, Gil Murray and Scarlett Johansson. In both of those movies, the men in the Korean subtitles use panmal, non-honorific language, and the women are using honorific language. And it means that if I watch the movie with a Korean person, we're watching a different movie.
Yeah.
Because I'm watching the movie as just these two people interacting, and obviously they're different in status and age. One's a man, one's a robot, one's old, one's young, but they're just talking to each other like we are. But yet in Korean, and Korean people watch that, but they see something completely different because, as you said, Sarah, of the language.
Yeah. So that's the biggest barrier, I think, within Korean culture. And I do know that because of the structure, it has also made parts of Korean society very efficient. In the commanding orders, I do see the benefits of it as well, getting things done really quickly. But it does come with the cost when it boils down to expressing individuality. Right. Yeah.
Victoria, have you found the Korean language with honorifics, with hierarchy, with gender, with writing emails, and is that something for you, or you see different elements of difficulty in society?
I think it gave me two perspectives, actually. As a Korean, I would try to fit in as much as possible and try to be part of that community and that kind of a structural and cultural, behavior they're asking for. But on the other side of my mind is asking, is this really necessary? And is this how I should behave and set the tone for my entire career life? And I was like, how am I supposed to, try to intertwine and also be part of this community, but also fight back to the things that I cannot agree as coming from a Western culture? So those were the things I really thought about, and I can really relate to Sarah's position because even though she, like she said, she's trying to, put aside of how she's going to communicate with the other person, but also she did a smart way of portraying herself and also trying to be more assertive than trying to fit in. So I think she definitely did it in a smart way as her choice. But from my side, what I did is that because I started my career back in early 2010, things were still, male dominated. And also because I was the youngest person in the room with no female seniors to back me up. And I was actually reporting directly to the CEO. And because it was more of a startup company in a semiconductor industry. So, and it was not easy because all of the dynamics of men being there would actually order me to do what they tell me to do. And what I would do is that first I started asking questions, and that didn't work out well because they wanted me to be silent and also, move away from having that curiosity coming from a Western culture. And I was like, how am I supposed to learn and adapt to this culture and to the structure they want me to? And what I did is that I started to, poke around what I could do best. What I did is that I tried to be more friendlier and try to commonize things with the engineers first, because my role back then was to, blend in the cultures and also for the contractual purpose of working with the engineers and trying to navigate those contractual deals outside of Korea kind of helped me navigate through the English language because they wanted help, actually, without using the Korean, language tone. So that's the part of me which I did by trying to be more friendlier, but at the same time, learn their language and trying to be part of that culture and community, but also trying to be more assertive and tell them what we need to do rather than, being told of what I should do. And that kind of, changed the tone. But it took me quite some years because I think, Sarah, you made a really smart choice.
I don't know if I've noticed. It's just my little thing of me behind them, not thinking, oh, I made a difference that, I probably wouldn't say, but I don't know.
But if she was my senior, I would have really, been really fond of her because there was no one to actually, support me there. And I think this is what we really do. Innovational women would, innovative women would, try to find their own ways to figure out and, try to find the solution in every step of the way. And Sarah did her own way to find that, find your position within the company. And that was me finding my own way of, trying to blend in, but also being assertive in a way where I can be someone,
And I think 2010 was a very different Korea. It's only 15 years ago, but I was here then, and the changes are incredible. Just listening to your story, Victoria, I love the way that many have done it, but I'm thinking right now of Bong Joon-ho in movies like Salina Chuo, how there will be female characters that have all the right ideas and can solve the problems, but nobody listens to them. Please make me puff the it's that disregard, that don't do that, that ignore. So I think this brings us towards, how is society changing? Is society changing? It feels to me like it is, but then again, I don't have lived experiences. How is Korean society changing in this regard? Is it changing fast enough? Where does it need to change? Is it not changing? How do you see this idea of transformation?
I think it's definitely changing compared to 2010 back then. But even like I can compare before I joined my career, or even this company, or even 3 years ago, we still used to use this like 부장님, 상무님, stuff like that. But at that time, it was really hard to ask question and also not even answering because I have to answer in the specific way. But later on, our company started using only 2 titles, like manager and pro. Later on, people are more speak up, or they feel more secure about what they're saying because they believe they have right to say this. And also, it's more respectful environment. So I think with a young generation and some cultural inclusive education, I think the society is changing. Also, maybe structural changes help. But I think still we are behind compared to the Western countries, but compared to 2010 or compared to 2020, we are getting faster and faster. It's way better than
think so.
Before.
So I think an example for me is I made my mom a feminist, like, but that's quite a hard thing.
5 months to go.
Yes, exactly. Because I remember like back in 2015, I was a uni student at Melbourne, and I took this class called The Politics of Sex. So it was basically like a feminist 101 class, and that class really like changed my mind about how you view women's relationship in society and domestic roles and so and so. So I was on the phone back in the day, like telling my mom, and she was like, "You're talking bullshit. Like this is, like, And I think there's a part of her that was really hard to hear because she has been that house, the domestic wife in the household for so many years. And the things I was telling her made her really uncomfortable. So in the end, I remember she was kind of lashing out at me and being a bit angry at the comments I'd made. Fast forward 10 years, like you look in her bookshelf, she has books from like Simone de Beauvoir, like Virginia Woolf, like she's reading, and dividing myself in all these like historical and contemporary feminist literature. So, and we always constantly have this communication as well. Like, for instance, like, growing up in a very Korean household, I think, let's say if the dad says, "Oh, I want a glass of milk," he would just say it, right? And then the mom would always stand up and she's always fixing him a glass of milk. And I think now, I think I corrected my mom once in front of my dad. There's like, "Dad, you can actually like go up and pour yourself a glass of milk." And he was like, "Oh yeah, I can do that," So it wasn't like it was an offensive thing or against the patriarch, but it's just that expected behavior, not from the men, but from the women themselves, think that they have to serve the man in a domestic certain role was big part. So now, when at least in my parents' household, if somebody wants something, they do them by themselves. And I think that's a big change in, because everything starts in the household and it would eventually kind of permeate. So I think, changing my mom into a feminist compared to 10 years ago, I think that's a progress. Another thing is that, I mentioned about my triathlon journey as well. And I am with a triathlete club that's only consists of women. So, and I think that's a big thing to kind of,
Is that a policy or is that just the way it works? Is it?
No, it's the triathlon club. They just started with 5 women, like a couple of years ago, and they've only taken female newbies because, I think with differences in like physical capability, and also like, there's a lot of things we can share as like female athletes that doesn't really translate well with the male athletes. So by these examples of these sports, which is often, especially in Korea still, is seen as quite a male-dominated area, and a lot of women themselves stop themselves from doing sports because we're not really well taught in sports education in Korea. To see a triathlon club appear and that blossoming, coming from like 5 members to now like 15 members in the past like 7 years, I think that's testament to something that's changing. So slowly, I think there's corners of society where we see a change slowly.
Yeah, I can add one more in terms of the readiness of the regulatory environment as well, because like I remember, I think it was 2022. So from 2022, it became mandatory for the company which assets size more than 2 trillion. 2 trillion Korean won, they have to designate and nominate at least the 1 female board of directors in their boardroom. So that it helps, that's mandated under the Act of Capital or Market or something. I don't remember in English, but it's a 자본시장법 in Korean. So because of that regulatory changes, it helped the society, at least the business community, to increase the proportion of the female in the executives and leadership. So I think it helped in a way in terms of, raising awareness of raising social awareness as well.
That's important. If it's mandated, you can't just exclude people. That's how change can happen and perhaps sometimes should happen. I think this change is so evident. Just to respond to what you've said to me, I've been at Seoul Women's University since 2007, and I've heard Tagi Soges for the last only 18 years. And now women tell me that they're into baseball, that they're into League of Legends, that they're into football, that they're into rock music. And they might have been in the past but didn't say, or they might not have been in the past. But the difference is in the hobbies and the interest, how they express themselves is, I'm conscious of it. And so it's not something that's gone unnoticed. Shout out to the women's football team that I coach. And we have sort of 20 people turn up, and the other week we were playing Seongsinyo대, and we coached Soryo대.
Yeah.
And it was a Monday night and the rain was outrageous. The rain was terrible. And my team was texting me saying, Coach, it's raining. And my male team would play in this. I didn't want to, but you do what you want to do. I'm not going to push you in, but I would play this. You play football in the rain and the snow. You can't play football just when you want to play football. This is what I tried to. And they went, okay. 해줘. And they all walked and they got soaked, but afterwards the experience by going through that, and I'm not sure that would have happened as readily in 2007. I wouldn't have seen that, but it's happening now. I can see the changes in the small things. The glasses of milk, the football, and the law.
It's same for me as well. Like back in the day, I started my career back in 2008, and that time, still there's companies as well, but you are supposed to have a lunch together as a team members, and also you're not allowed to really skip 회식.
The skip day, this collective visit.
It's sort of like considered expansion to your that nowadays we don't do much 회식 in the evening. We do a lunch session with the team, and you are free to schedule by yourself if you are something more important than people speak up. I'm not available for the team lunch or team dinner, etc. So they express. So I think there's a bit of change as well in terms of the understanding self, and they're really sensitive about their core values, and they're quite strong sense of identity in terms of leading their identity aligned with such core values.
Being able to say no.
Yes.
There's a company dinner tonight. No, I'm not going. That was almost impossible to say. Or if everybody says we're getting, pasta, and you say, yeah, but I want noodles. Or what it is. That would be bad nunchi. That would be harming the harmony. But I think that's changing. The idea of hondap or eating alone is very simple, but so new in this society. I'm not sure if this is important to you, but you've mentioned sort of DEI and diversity and this kind of thing. Do you see, or do you have any comments on that? It's mentioned a little bit in the book about how this is empowering and being the key for women. Does that extend across society more broadly? I mean, we were talking about one of our guests is dealing with the Cambodian issue at the moment. There's multiculturalism, there's mixed heritage, there's people of different races, sexualities. How does that play into it? Because it feels like it's part of the book a little bit, part of the conversation.
It is actually. I think DEI thing is happening quite a lot. I mean, in terms of ESG management, maybe because of it was boom back from 2022 and 2023. All the largest company in Korea, they adopted ESG management as part of that. They have to also had to work toward DEI. And they mentioned we are working toward increased the gender diversity, not only for the leadership, also in general in workplaces. So I mean, going back to the previous discussion. Creating environment like increasing the visibility of female in the workplaces absolutely matters to create social changes. And I'm working for the global company, a Korean company. For example, for my organization, we do have. I mean, we are number one most sustainable company in the world. We have 35% of the executives are female. So with that, really motivate myself to prevail as a female leaders in my organization, and also help me to have a sense of a strong commitment as well to contribute to the same purpose as well. So definitely it's happening in my organization, but I'm also have been observing a little bit of a changes in Korean companies as well.
Yeah. Talking about the diversity, as we are all different people, diversity are already there. But we are now started awareing because we want to respect each other's. In our company, we are multicultural company, so there are more than I think 10 types of countries where people from 10 types or more than over 10 countries. There are Indians and also Dutch, Germans, and even I think like Taiwanese, Japanese. Anyway, but we did some fun activity about this like cultural difference activity, and I realized Korea is really indirect people, and then Dutch uh, or German or all the Europeans are they're all direct, and then my company's average is in the middle. So I learned that either people who are less Koreanized like to stay here, or they are trained to be more direct by working there. So I see only this, and then how we communicate is so different. Even outside the company, it can affect in your daily life. So the diversity is everywhere, but you have to be aware of differences and respect. So I think that's really important. So that's why our company is putting the inclusion before diversity. And yeah, so it's very hard to talk about still the DEI because I feel like I'm like bringing new terms to people to educate, but the diversity is already there, and we're just respecting people, and so that we can be more equal. So I think that way is more easy way to approach to talk about this. Yeah.
I do have one example I want to share. So, I mean, before Trump happened, second term, I think DI we had more funding in it. So even my company and I think a lot of companies, like since Trump came in, and last year a lot of DI funding were cut. So I was part of like a DI subcommittee at work. We were discussing about so what is diversity, inclusion, and ideas. And I remember this person saying, "Oh, we have diversity. We have," and I was like, "Oh, do we?" And then the person was like, "Yeah, we have diversity of ideas in the company," and that really struck me because in other contexts, like that's not what I would expect diversity is. I think thinking you have diversity of ideas because we listen to person A speak, person B speak, person C speak. For me, diversity is more apparent and more visible. It's challenging the ideas or the assumptions that you might have of someone by looking at them and hearing their story and learning this common ground of how to work together and respect together in a workplace. So that's when I learned that we still had a long way to go, especially in Korean workforces. And I think it's because, going back to the whole homogeneity like idea of Korean society, even growing up, like you rarely see people that look different from you. I remember like, I think it was like a swimming pool that I went when I was a kid in elementary school. I saw like a disabled kid first, and I remember being just staring at them, and not because I was disrespectful or something like that. It was because you just never see them up until a certain age. But then you go to certain other countries, like say like Berlin, which is quite a very liberal city, and you have a lot more people with different how they dress, how they speak, different races, different backgrounds, different able-bodied. So I think that's what Korea lacks is the visibility of different people. Because we didn't have a lot of influx of immigrants, but I do know that's changing a lot right now. And I think one part is going back to like a little theory I had about how Korean society likes to empower mainstream voices. I think people who think they're not the mainstream kind of also hold back, and they don't really show up into the mainstream arena. So when I think about diversity, as you asked, I think it's you want everyone from each part of a corner of society to know that they have a space and a voice to be filled in society. And it's for us who thinks we're the mainstream to be educated, that you need to see these people and you need to know that and find a way how to work with these people, respect them. So I think Korea is also changing, not only from a feminist perspective, but also we have the highest record of foreigners visiting Korea last year, which I think is quite remarkable. Like I also remember being young and even like people saying, oh, like why would foreigners would come to Korea? Like, it was only the weirdos who were into North Korea would come into Korea, or all these, there was all these like prejudice of, or it was like the military people. Like, if you see a foreigner on the street, it was either of those like couple of groups. But now you have, people just here traveling and just wanted to know what Korea is like. So I'm actually quite excited to see what Korea would look like in the next 10 to 15 years, because we already know that there's a lot of interracial like couples and immigrants and some refugees and the people showing up. So I think it's the ecosystem of Korea would become a lot more diverse, and I think we need to be prepared for it. Yeah.
It's fascinating you mentioned Berlin and you have experience of Australia, Sarah, but going back to the United Kingdom, to England, having been here for so long, and I turn on the television and walk around the streets, I'm like, wow, diversity is visible.
Yeah.
There's disabled people on children's television.
Yeah.
It's just there, so you're accustomed to it,
Yeah.
so that you don't have this staring experience where you say, I've never seen this before.
Yeah.
Yes, it's never happened. I think you only realize it once you step out of Korea and see how much it's changing. I want to give a shout out to one of my students and also a friend, Yunso. She used to join me on my podcast episode. She did about 20 with me just to provide the voice of a young Korean student, and got her to meet all sorts of people. But she made the suggestion that it would be nice if Korean textbooks once in a while, when they showed multiculturalism in their textbooks for high school, it wasn't just people in hijabs and various traditional costumes, but it also showed people that look Korean.
Yeah.
Because they could also be just changing the way that media works and presents ideas. And I think, there's a big spotlight on Korea and, it got this wrong and it did this wrong. And it's changing. Korean people have only been traveling abroad since 1989.
Yeah.
It's very new and
Yeah.
making mistakes with the spotlight on it. But generally, I'm quite positive about it. Can we say maybe something about hope, about change, about the future? We spoke a little bit about the past and these things. Do you have hope for the future? Is Korea a country where you can fulfill your dreams? Is it big enough to do those things? Or what change should happen? Or tell me something a little bit about the future, the next generation, what goes on.
I think that is already happening, I mean, you can tell from the statistics, like, people getting married quite late and not even getting married. And like marriage and having kids becomes a matter of choice, not destiny. So it's very, nowadays it's very easy to see, to be around with single people. And I think the fact that exist, it is sort of like, a proof that there will be a number of diverse way of living, because maybe because thanks to the SNS, social media, it's very easy to really explore many different ways of living, right? And nowadays MC and generation, they do not feel like vulnerability to become the self. So I think that will definitely help us to create a hopeful career in a way, because like Sarah mentioned, Korea has been quite strong homogeneous country. We lack diversity, and we used to also have a strong diversity toward diverse culture, accepting multicultural context, etc. So having those factors in our environment, I think that will definitely help to move beyond that.
That's the flip side of the Uri culture, isn't it? Uri was so essential for Korean national development and bordering, and this was nation building. This wasn't even a country. It was divided. Okay, you guys are a country now, and you're all Uri. Okay, you're all emo and halabodi, and it was manufactured that way. It worked, and there is a a genetic element to it as well. But the flip side of the Uri is that everybody else becomes an other.
Right.
Everybody else becomes a Wego kid or an outsider. That's still there a little bit. I've asked progressive young students at university, and my children, Edward and Elizabeth, can they be Korean? And I've had students go, can... yes. But he thinks Dr. Nuridang, he understand it thing. So yeah, it's still changing. It does take time. Yeah. The future, Sam, Victoria?
Yeah. So I was thinking about it. Like when we look at the recipe books, there's like number 1, 2, 3. Like you have to follow these steps. Please don't follow these steps. I wanted to tell the young generation about it, because when it comes to like when you're going to elementary school, middle school, you go to hagwon until 10 p.m. and then you go to this university, you find this job, you want to be a lawyer, stuff like that. And then people really lost why they're doing it. So, but when we make the ramen, you just do whatever you want. Like you can make a hangang ramen or mix with the bulldakbokkeumyeon, stuff like that.
Put an egg in there.
Yeah, the eggs, 2 eggs, or bop or rice, yeah, whatever. But they're following this whole cookbook that's bestseller. They said, but why do you do this? So I think I kind of knew why I do this early 20s, and then I started steering like my way. But I look back, I just wish I could know earlier. And then whenever I see some uni students, then I said, why do you want to apply for this job? Why do you want to study? And then the answer is not available. So sometimes I want to tell them, like, don't follow this. Don't follow your mom's or dad's dreams. Just do what you want to do. Try, face, and make hangang ramen and taste it. Go for it. Yeah.
I hope your next book is called Make Your Own Ramen.
Okay, inspiration.
You owe me coffee if it comes. Deal?
Only coffee or cafe.
일단 we share. Victoria, the future.
The future.
Your face, you were crying, and you have the hard ones and the things that young people go through.
Well, I mean, I was part of it, and I think we're still part of it. But I think we're just trying to find a fast track way to be successful. I think younger generation has more, keen to that idea than what we had. We struggled, and then we learned, and then we came up with an idea, and now we're settled. But for the younger generation, I think they're always chasing for, those ideas to fast track all the struggles and be successful in an instant moment. And like Sangeun said, we can't let them follow what worked for us as a recipe anymore, because the world is changing so fast, and that recipe is not going to exist in later, like 2 years or 5 years or in 10 years later. And what we're trying to, I think, at least what I'm trying to say through this book to the younger generation is that we have hopes for them, but at the same time, I want them to navigate their own way of finding what's best for their future. And in order for them to do that is just, reference what we've done, but don't follow it. But please make rebellious choices, because I know it is complicated. I mean, if we have a steady life, I can guarantee that it's going to be okay, but very boring. But when you make rebellious choices, everything in your life is going to be a swirl of twister. But then you are going to find the sparks and land somewhere where you're able to grow and follow your dreams. So I think the companies in Korea, needs to shift that kind of a culture they have within of, growing within, but actually growing more internationally. And in order for them to do that, I think they need to, find a way of that Korean gene to work for the international environment, like the companies that's settled well in the Silicon Valley. So I want, Korean to be successful, but we need our own Korean Silicon Valley. And I think that kind of companies not just start from a, Jebel or global companies. It starts from, startup, younger generation with great ideas to inspire. And I think that really needs to come. And Sarah, I think you should really find your own startup as well.
Okay, wow.
The other business.
So, yeah. Powdered ramen.
Because, like I said, they have really great ideas which we couldn't really, think of back in 20, 30 years ago. But now they have these, great sparks, which I think it's really gonna work upon.
So when you talked about future, like I was thinking in my head, like the future of the existence of Korea, the future of our economy. I was trying to think about that, and then that kind of brought me back to the past, the 4,000 history that we have. And Victoria, you mentioned about the Korean gene, because I think what I know, being a Korean and also reading and knowing about the Korean diaspora around the world, is that Koreans are very resilient and very adaptive, and we're very quick to feedback and change. Like even you go down to pizza shop and every month there's like 30 different menus on the pizza. Like only in Korea around the world would have like various options for like potato pizza. Like it's crazy how they really take on the feedback and change to be dynamic and adaptive and to connect. So knowing that, I definitely have hope for the future of Koreans, because we've somehow arbitrarily lived in this land for the past 4,000 years, and we've made our own culture, made our own language, and I think that's something we should be really proud of. And I do keep talking about this homogeneity aspect of it, but then if you look into the segments of history, there were a lot of interactions with like China, Japan, India, and we all think we come from this one single gene, but we're actually all quite mixed. So I think that, and combining with the more international community coming in and us becoming more international, we will be transforming into a different version of Korea, but continuing on that legacy and the gene, the DNA of resilience and adaptiveness. So knowing that, I think that's really very hopeful. And like I said, if you look into back 2010 and now 15 years, it's very different creative and envision. So who knows what the next 5 or 15 years of Korea would look like. I think that's something to be excited about as well. But like what others have said, is that because we know the world is changing at a rapid pace that no one can predict, it's hard to continue on to hold on to the ideals that you had in the past, right? And one thing, or this kind of fallacy that I often find in Koreans and my friends and sometimes in myself, is often what I want is what you want and what others want. And we all think we all want the same thing. And it's like a little chain reaction. So we all have to continue to want the same thing, because one person falls out, then this whole game means nothing. So I'm hoping that one person would actually stop the game and stand up and say, hey, like this is actually makes no sense. This is not what I want anymore. And then like everybody, ends up finding what they want. So I think that's one mentality that we should kind of try to be aware of. Yeah. Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
My Korean economics teacher always used to show me a picture of everybody standing up to watch the football game, and they were uncomfortable because they had to stand up to watch it. And if they all sat down, they would have the exact same view. And they
Exactly. Yeah. One person just needs to do it.
one person needs to stop saying like it's the hard one, and then the next person will do it, and then the next person will do it. But who will do it first?
Exactly.
Because if only you do it, you're at a disadvantage.
Exactly. And you ask all these moms, like, why do you send your kid? And they're like, I know, like my kid doesn't, but next door Tommy does it. And it's like, but then you feel like you can't let your child down by not sending them. So it's this very like a psychological thing, which all these industries like make a lot of money out of. Different story, but I think that's why we should be aware of our behaviors and really talk to ourselves is this what I want? Or is this what you want?
Cultural gaslighting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Does it? But you said two things that I thought were beautiful, which was that Korean people are resilient. I sometimes use the word anti-fragile, that they experience so much hardship, and which should break a people, which should break a country. And it has broken other countries and peoples, but Korea had seemingly gotten stronger, and it survived despite the hardship, or even because of the hardships. There is a wonderful resilience here. And when you talked about the future, Sari, you didn't mention becoming sort of more westernized or globalized, but you said we'll become new Koreans.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that we can become. And I think that's really beautiful. It's not we're trying to emulate other people or be like them, but we need to understand who we are, where we've come from, and create new Koreans. And I think that's what you're doing, which is beautiful. Perhaps as we bring this to a close, and then I can sit and listen to it. This is very cool. I love it. Any final recommendations? This could be a book, a movie, a drama. Any final pieces of advice, words of encouragement, things that people should do? Go and get your own milk, or Sotsanda Barrigia and people saying that they're a little chapter. Is there any final message, things that people should do, read, say, be? Perhaps Minyoung, we'll start with you.
Well done. I mean, going back to the main purpose, as when we are here, let's recommend read our book, deviate, which will be released soon. I mean, ebook is already available, but a printed book will be available soon. So, read our book, deviate, the composition of 10 Korean women's stories. With multiple, identity and cultures and etc. As a starter to transform, your life.
Oh, to sell another book. No, sorry. No, the same book, but I have to read this because this one is from our the first page of the book that I really love. I have to read it because I can't memorize. So the editor's note, they said it's from Audre Lorde. It said that if I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eternal life. So this book is about it. And also, I feel like maybe keep your identity. Like I hope other people or audiences to find their identity and then to really struggle to keep it, because if you lose it, you lose everything. Yeah.
All right. So if I say the same thing about the book, I think it's going to be boring. So I think one message I would like to say in one word. Curiosity. I think that's the best word where you can start anything. With that curiosity, you can build a starship. You can build, you can transform into somebody else and be yourself as well. So I think have that curiosity within yourself and ask those questions, whether, you like this, whether you want to, you want to do this or not, be curious about yourself so that you can motivate others and enlighten others to, come on board with you. So I'm not a single woman, presented here to speak about the book, but it's about me plus these 9 fantastic women who were gathered together with, with their authentic stories. So they were curious about themselves and passionate enough to, share these stories. So I think the ones who's, listening to this YouTube and watching us out there should have that curiosity and share your own stories to us as a next step. So thank you, everyone.
I just want to say, Victoria, the inner punk in me resonates so hard with your advocating rebellious choices building your own spaceship. It's fantastic. You're sometimes the softest spoken here, but there's something very interesting about it. Brilliant.
Thank you. Two things I want to say. One is that's literally the plot of the book I was going to recommend, which I'm obsessed with right now. It's called Tiny Experiments by Anne-Laure Leconte. She's a French psychologist. So her story is very interesting because she used to be like a global global marketing director for Google at the age of 27. She made her ladder up, and at one point she had a burnout, and then she started PhD in neuroscience, and then she tried to understand how people set goals and how people succeed in life. And her basically message is to stay curious, and you should run tiny experiments on yourself. So I come from a science background, so I just loved the approach of it, because often we think we have this linear idea of what a goal and success is. It's you say, I want to become this at the age of this, right? But what you need to do is you need to test that on yourself if that journey works for you. You know, you have to be curious. You have to see, okay, I will try something different out. And you have to collect a lot of raw data on yourself to make some kind of executive decision of how you want to live your life. So that's a book that I'm really obsessed with, which really resonates with what Victoria said. And unfortunately, it's not translated in Korean yet. So I really hope someone does. Maybe me? I don't know. It was like... But I think you should listen to her podcast and read the book. Second is, you mentioned punk. There's a band called Sailor Honeymoon. I don't know if you know. It's run by one of my really good friends, Abby, and she started this all-girls Korean girl punk band. And it was like, this like fun project that we started out like a couple of years ago now. She took it off and she's doing tours around the world, putting it Primavera, and her album is just amazing. So if you love punk and you support Korean girl punk, and if you want to watch videos of these girls like running around Mangwon-sijang and in a cockroach costume, I think you should definitely check out Sailor Honeymoon, and they're the best. So yeah.
Thank you for all of that. And just before we close, I just want to make sure we say, or I say, thank you for coming here and doing this, not only because it's hard and you're busy and you've had to travel for hours, some of you, and it's late, and this is Myeongdong, and you had to speak in sometimes a second language, and that's really hard. But also, I want to make clear, thank you for trusting me to do this. It would have been very easy to sort of be cynical about it, or who's this guy, what's going on, but you've come here and you've been very generous, not only with your time, but with your spirit of opening up and sharing the stories with people. So I'm really glad you've made my world bigger. I've enjoyed reading your book, and I hope more people do it. And I look forward to the translations, the spaceships, the make your own ramen, and the women that change the world on the CEO board. So thank you very much, everybody. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Alicia.
And relax, that's it.
Wow. Which really spontaneous. Huh?
We didn't stop the movie.
Yeah. So great. So very good.
Tiki Patrick was nice.
I actually learned new things about these ones today.
I think my energy is quite good. I'm asking the right questions out there, Victoria. No?
Oh, wow.
So is this your studio? Or...
No, I wish it was. No. It has two, this one and another one. And I looked at getting recording studios.